Hey, Michael.
Hey, Diane, good to see you and continue to crank on these AI tools that are starting to change what learning looks like in schools with you today.
Today is going to be a really fun one. I'm very excited to dive in with our guest today. But before we do that, we this is our second time making this ask of our listeners, a second time in like 7 seasons. And we never really thought this was important or quite frankly even thought about it. But it turns out it would be super helpful if you all could rate or review Class Disrupted wherever you're listening to the podcast, and of course, please subscribe to it. And we've never asked you to do this because this is very much like a labor of love for us, but it turns out it kind of matters a little bit.
Yeah, it's absolutely true, Diane. And it's a good way for other listeners to find out about it. And we, of course, get tons of private feedback from listeners. So we know you're all out there. But, if you can rate it, review it, subscribe it, you'll help other people figure out as well what's going on here. And while, as you said, this is a passion project for us, we do want it to matter and change the broader dialogue. So people are having these conversations. And it turns out those 5 stars, subscribe, beep, whatever it is. Those are a big deal, right, Diane?
Yeah, they are. And then the last thing we'll say about this is please keep telling us privately the things that we're asking you to now say publicly, which is like what you like, who we should talk to, what's working. We really do love the feedback and try to incorporate it every chance we get. And so please keep that coming.
Keep it coming, indeed.
Yeah.
This is going to be a fun episode today, though. It's a friend of both of ours who deep admiration for. Daisha Toll is our guest today. She's a lifelong educator, school builder. She's known for her work, obviously, in 1999, founding principal of Amistad Academy in New Haven, Connecticut, dedicated to closing that achievement gap, and then went on to found, of course, Achievement First, a network of many, I think 40 plus charter schools in the country, recognized nationwide as one of the highest performing school systems and so forth. And then in 2021, Daisha left Achievement First and soon after launched this company called Course Mojo, which we're going to get to talk about today. We're going to break it down. It's an AI powered teaching assistant, but we're going to actually say what that in fact means, because it has very, very cool specific use cases that I think people are going to enjoy learning about. And Daisha, thank you so much for being here. We're thrilled to have you.
Very
Well,
happy to be here with both of you guys.
yeah, super happy. I will say that over the years I have learned so much from Daisha on so many fronts, and so I'm really grateful to be here
Right
with
back
you.
at you, Diane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say this is fun, right? We've all known each other, and Daisha, you and Diane, you have something in common, which is you founded a school, then a CMO, and left a few years back, and now both of you running ed tech companies. We may come back to that. I should say you both raised venture funding. There's a lot of interesting things here. Listeners, of course, have a sense for why Diane made her job move in my parlance, but why did you make yours? Like, what's the founding story behind Course Mojo and the problem you were trying to solve by founding it?
Yeah. So, as you pointed out, I've been at this for a while now. I've spent a lot of times in my happy place, which is classrooms, trying to figure out how to create the student experiences and the student outcomes, short term, long term, that we all want. And I do think we had a fair amount of our students had a lot of success by at least the traditional measures. And then importantly, we always anchored in college graduation and launch into career as part of what we were very focused on. But it was hard. Like everything, to really get a great teacher in every classroom with high quality instructional materials and a strong classroom culture and relationships amongst kids and teachers and family and community connections. And then I got inspired by Diane and tried to pull off project based learning and expeditions and personal goals and sort of doubled down on I don't know, I don't like calling them soft skills, but like the whole package, both as a parent. I now have teenage boys and as an
So I always
educator.
remember seeing your kid in the school as you were making that transformation. It was so much fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. So yes, my own kids went to Achievement First schools. And so it's all very personal. And I both believe as much as I did in the possibility of success. But if we're honest about it, it took so many things to line up to be successful. And I just, especially when AI emerged on the scene, I thought, wow, I've been, frankly, for most of that time, an ed tech skeptic. I think there have been lots of promises, and it's a sort of overpromise, underdeliver is, I think, the pattern, if you're honest about most ed tech. And AI felt different. Like, we refer to it internally, I know others do as well, as an electricity. And you still have to build the light bulb or the power screwdriver or, the tools that will leverage that electricity, but you are fundamentally working with something different now. And I found that inspiring. And so how the problem we're focused on, it does feel like it's been a lifelong effort, is reading achievement. Like, as you guys know, the NAEP scores in 8th grade are at the lowest level in 30 years. It does really feel like too many kids are falling off a cliff when it comes to basics of reading and writing. We could debate whether we think that's still going to matter in an AI powered future. I do. And so it feels really urgent. And so we have two big North Star goals. We are trying to improve reading achievement. Specifically, we focus at the middle school level, although we're now expanding to grades 3 through 10 next year. And then second, on teacher efficacy leading to teacher retention. Like, we want more great people to stay in this profession. I think a lot of AI tools are trying to save teachers time. We certainly do that too. But we think we are in this profession because we want to serve kids well, and that what will motivate you is you feel like, I'm doing a really good job at this thing that I care a lot about.
So let's dig in then, and just Course Mojo, obviously that tool, as you were saying, that you built using the electricity of AI to help solve that reading problem and boost teacher effectiveness. How do you describe what it does today in middle schools? What is Course Mojo?
So there's a student-facing side and a teacher-facing side. On the let me just say, take one quick step back before I dive in.
Perfect.
You guys have been having so many fascinating conversations. Thank you for that. And people should like and subscribe and rate.
Thank you.
Favorably. But I think it's Bob Hughes and others who've talked about, like, multiple levels of AI in schools, or models or paradigms. There is the one that I think is happening the most, which is finding efficiencies in small ways for teachers, whether that's grading or on the operational side. And again, that's great, but it's sort of at the margins and supplemental, or not actually touching students at all. Then there's this second model, which is more transformational when it comes to the teaching and learning experience. I think that's at the moment where Course Mojo sits. And then there's the third model, which is the AI native schools. And I did listen to your episode with John Danner. And that, I think, is so. And my personal belief, as somebody who spent a lot of time in schools, is that some people will want to and be able to make a leap to an AI native school that's an entirely different design, including in the goals that it's trying to achieve with young people. But I think a lot of folks are going to hopefully make this transition into the Model 2 work, where it is meaningfully, it's transformative in terms of what the experience is like, but it's not a different universe. It's like you're still in schools, you're still trying to do the core jobs, many of which I think are still important, although we could have that conversation if you wanted. So we're going into the ELA classroom mostly as it currently exists, where you, especially in middle school, generally have content expert teachers who are trying to help kids improve their critical thinking about text and their writing skills, discourse, collaboration among students. And we start with the high quality instructional materials. As you all know, it's been one of the, I think, most positive steps forward to really have a quality curriculum that's anchored in building knowledge, vocabulary, and reading skill over time. But that's another one of those things that we all believe in, but is hard to execute effectively. And as a result, we have not universally seen the gains that we all believe we could. So we start there. The first thing our team does is identify the hardest thinking part of every lesson, which we know from the national research on these core curricula is often the part that gets a little watered down or skipped. Teachers run out of time, or frankly, they're worried about the diversity of learners that exist. I think there's on average a 5 grade level span in a typical middle school classroom right now. So you can understand why teachers are anxious about giving the rigor of the text and task. So we identify the hardest thinking part of the lesson. Then for that part, not the entire thing, but for that 25-minute chunk, that's where for the kids, as the student said to me, it's like the handout is talking to me. So it's the same rich, wonderful text we're already trying to read. It's the same analysis questions we're already supposed to be grappling with. But now kids are in partners or small groups, and we can come back to why that's important to us. But they're talking and then typing. And Mojo is like a learning buddy in that context. And what happens is Mojo figures out what the kid knows or doesn't know about in response to that question, and then affirms, gives a little moment of metacognition if they need it, if they're struggling, and like an insight, and then gives them next just right question. And we could get back to why all three of those steps I think are important, but that's something we've worked on over time to make sure we're not trying to replace the teacher, but we're trying to, as our great teachers have said, I can't be in 27 places at once. So
Yep.
how can we get as close as possible in like what a good teacher would do when a kid's struggling with a rich, meaningful question? So the kids are working. Meanwhile, the teacher has a live dashboard that shows every student's level of understanding for every question. And so every class is wonderfully different, but in general, 85% of kids are humming with their partner and with Mojo, but the teacher knows right away the 15% of kids who are struggling for whatever reason, could be motivational, could be comprehension, and directs their effort and then sort of tees up for them what's the gap between what the
Mm.
current response and the criteria for success for that question. And so the teacher can does go around the room, conference one-on-one or with the entire small group, and push them forward as well. So we don't think the AI is going to get every kid exactly where they need to be for the deep understanding. And in fact, we very meaningfully want the teacher to be focused strategically on what they can uniquely do well. So that happens for about 12 to 15 minutes that the kids are working on these generally close read questions, could be writing. And then the teacher goes over to pushes a button and Mojo tees up the two biggest misconceptions in the class right now and a suggested discussion question. So the teacher reviews them. We always want the teacher to make the choice about what's the best use of time. Then the teacher pauses the class and facilitates a class discussion, not about every single question, but about the thing that is most holding kids back, often cuts across questions. And what we found is, I think it's 85% of kids say they're more likely to participate in class after having worked with Mojo. So on both the student side, they're encouraged to participate. And then on the teacher side, they're more confident because they kind of know what to go after. And I think this just hits on another point. There are AI powered learning experiences that are silent solo.
Tons of them. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
We, for a whole bunch of reasons, we're talking about core tier one instruction. We want it to be as beautiful as what these curriculum materials and teacher vision calls for, with more discourse, not less. And then again, there's a lot we don't know about the future for these young people, but we know we're going to need our human skills more than ever. So that ability to work together, both in a full group setting and a partner setting, is really important. Anyway, and then finally it does end with an exit ticket which is kids do independently, often writing. What's different now is kids get in every phase of this, kids get multiple rounds of feedback and then they revise their thinking and they revise their writing to make it better. And we know that also, like if you do, I think about all the grading I did over the years and like you just grade and the kids don't,
Do
it
anything
actually
with
doesn't
that.
make a
Yeah.
difference. You have to
Yeah.
revise.
Yeah.
So that's inherent. And then there's celebrations throughout. And Mojo also it pulls exemplary student work, highlights kids who should be shouted out. So that's the long whirlwind tour as to what it looks like.
It's awesome. Thank you for making it so concrete,
Yes.
literally taking us into a classroom about and, anyone who's been in a classroom, an English language arts classroom, what I taught, certainly, like, what you're describing is what I aspired to do as a teacher, right? But I had to use my whiteboard or in the old days, my chalkboard.
Yeah.
And I would, what I would call bumblebee around the classroom. Like you're just trying to like bumblebee around. So the kids are supposedly doing what they're doing, but you're not giving any feedback. You don't actually know if they're getting it or not, like, and so, it is making, well, in my words, it's making the mere mortal be able to be the sort of superhuman teacher that we all want and imagine. And it just like my partner in doing that, right? I can be everywhere all at once and I, have the brain working next to me and whatnot. What I know is that, what I know from you and our previous conversations, and this is where I'd love to dig in and get a little bit nerdy right now, is Michael and I keep pressing people to say, like, what do you mean when you say by AI, AI? Because I think most people think that's like, logging into ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini and just asking a question. And you have gone through an extraordinary amount of work with AI to enable everything you just described. So will you take us sort of under the hood a little bit?
Yeah.
Talk about the type of work your team had to do to train the AI and get it to do the things you're talking about and for you to feel good about it.
Yeah. This is something I both think AI is a game changing electricity, and I'm sort of frequently disappointed from a pedagogical perspective,
Mhm.
even with the general large language models in terms of how well they evaluate student responses and how poorly generally they do at coming up with the next just right question. They're so wired to give away the answer that it really is not the best pedagogical experience at this point. But what we do is, so first we start with the text and the questions, but then that's nowhere near enough. It's about what the AI uses to evaluate the student
Yep.
response.
Yep.
And what they're using is not just the knowledge of the unit and the unique text complexity and the lesson objectives for the day, but rather we have programmed in question specific criteria. So they know if you're analyzing this beautiful Langston Hughes poem and you're answering this question that you need to, it's maybe a vocabulary and context question. You need to know both what the word means and you need to know what it means in the context of this beautiful extended metaphor. And there's not one right answer. This is what's complicated about the criteria of success, but there is a universe of good answers. There is a universe of typical kid confused answers. And that can be constantly refined. Like as kids teach us new insights into, something like poetry, we can upgrade and do in real time. But so they're criteria specific questions, question specific criteria for success, which to my knowledge, I don't know that anybody else is doing because it takes a lot of work on the front end. Now
I
we
was going to say, like,
increasingly,
you have to go deep into these texts, right? I mean, just
yeah,
describe a little bit of that creation process also.
yeah. And then there's a whole other reading framework, but we can get to that. So yes, initially it required some of the best teachers we know on staff to do that kind of level of intellectual prep that you would do. Basically, what constitutes an exemplary answer? What are the transferable criteria of that great answer? So originally we human powered it. Now we have so many examples of excellent human powered criteria and have trained an AI authoring platform, which is internal facing only, to give us a good rough draft. But we're still having humans do a gut check, basically. On we could talk about what that looks like, but there are multiple steps. It's like dominoes that the AI agent will tee up different things, and we still want those excellent teachers to go through and check. But so that's what's happening on the question specific criteria. The other thing that we found is essential, which is why I really do believe for at least a long time, the specialized products are going to outperform the general, like thin layer products. And so we are very clearly geeking out on reading. And it's, as we know, reading is not math.
Mm-mm.
And it's not as simple. Like when a kid is struggling to understand a poem and to identify the central idea, it's rarely that the problem is the skill of identifying the central idea. It's almost always that there's something else about the way that text complexity that is getting in the way. Or it could be a fluency issue or a background knowledge or a vocabulary issue. And we sometimes want to say, oh, it's a main idea problem, which then leads people to go outside the curriculum and do a bunch of main idea practice, which we know does not work. So, like, there are a set of ways in which we now have a whole reading framework that we've developed with the good folks from ANET, Whitney Weldon, a whole bunch of reading experts, and it sort of honors the complexity of reading. So Mojo's looking at the criteria specific success. It's looking at the reading framework and it's trying to figure out what does this kid likely not understand about this? And that's where there's now this light bulb step that gives them like a little hint. And then it asks them the next just right question. And that is actually pulled from a bank of suggestions that is also was initially human authored, is now AI authored specific to that question. So that's it's not even tuning or training. It's that the AI in real time is consulting with a set of resources and trying to pull the the exact right instructional move for that
Yeah.
kid.
That have
I don't know if
been
it's helpful to give an example or
Yeah, well, because these have been created by expert teachers, vetted by expert teachers. And so, like, I think the thing I want to, and Michael help me here with the language, but like, there's a lot of people, I would say the majority of people who are doing AI products are literally just putting like a wrapper around the language
with a
models,
bunch of
right?
instructions of guardrails around the context
Yeah.
window.
it's like prompt engineering, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not the
They
training
have,
you just described.
no,
Yeah.
they haven't like literally taken expert professionals to work hand in hand with the AI to then produce this new experience, if you will, that brings the best of both of those. And so please do give us an example. I think it's super
Well,
helpful.
I was in a classroom last week in Colorado, and the kids were analyzing a poem. And the question from the curriculum was, what role do lines 6 and 7 play in this poem? And these seventh graders were like, I really have almost no idea. So, to the best of their ability, they sort of, most of them tried to say what was going on in lines 6 and 7. And so what Mojo does is like, okay, affirm, first of all, good job, in your own words, explaining what's happening in line 6 and 7. But then the light bulb step comes. This question is actually asking you about author's craft and an intentional choice the author made to include these lines. Follow up question. How would this poem be different without lines 6 and 7?
Mm,
That is like both the kid is like, oh, I didn't even understand that this was about a choice the author was making, like author's craft. And then now I'm like guided into a process of actually trying to figure this out. And then if
mhm.
they struggle with that, Mojo will say, well, what happens before and what happens after? There's like a set of additional questions that come out that what new teachers have told us, it's one of the greatest compliments, is they do the Mojo activity before the kids so that they understand how to ask a scaffolded question without totally draining the rigor out of the thinking work that's required, or how to give bite-sized feedback. So that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to do.
Deja, let's stay here for a minute as like a lifelong English language arts teacher. I wonder if some people will hear this and be like, who the heck cares if that author, like what their purpose was in those two lines? Like why are kids even learning this? Can't we just teach them to read? So let's spend a minute on how that transfers into the world and why that is so important and how, yeah, let's start there and then yeah. Like
Well, there's so many layers to your question. And I'd love for you as a lifelong ELA teacher to offer your own point of view as well. But I think first we have the question, do kids in this new future still need to learn to read and write? And my strong conviction is yes, they do. Like we're going to be processing lots of information, but as we all know, there's no like firm line between listening, reading, and writing. It's all the same cognitive process with each of them reinforcing the other. So learning to read is also a way in which, even if we believe AI is going to talk to us in the future, I think there's still like the vocabulary and the sort of way sentences get put together to effectively or ineffectively convey meaning. So that's one, is like we could talk more about that. But I also think I actually do believe we should be letting kids write more advanced pieces using AI. That's a whole separate other question. But if they haven't learned to write themselves, I think that is a very dangerous place to start.
yeah.
Um, so that's one. Second, it's really just critical thinking.
Well, that's where I'm going. Like, everyone's talking about cognitive offloading and the lack of critical thinking, and what you just literally put your finger on, that activity is, "Oh, I can question or get curious about what an author's intention was and why they did something," and that applies to every article, it applies to
Well, it
it
applies to the
applies
AI reading output you're getting, right? What
literally,
is
like,
yeah.
that
It
is
applies to
critical
art. I
thinking.
mean, it applies to human interactions. Like,
Exact
why is this person doing or saying what they're doing in the way they are doing or saying it? And what does that reveal about them, their purpose, the message they're trying to convey? Yeah, I think, I mean, just to, in defense of productive struggle, the brain, that's the way we learn. Like, if we don't attend and focus and think and productively struggle. Now there's a zone in which that's productive versus unproductive, but and that's part of what I think AI can help us get more kids like in their zone. But you have to. You have to
Yeah.
remember and forget and recall. And these are the ways that the neural pathways get formed in our brain.
Yeah. And I think your ability to like bring this into the classroom every day, where it's like, let's just imagine now these young people every day in their class, they're just doing this type of work over and over and over and over again. It is a muscle. You have to work it out. You have to build it. You have to practice it. It will go away if you don't use it. And much as we've aspired for classrooms to look like this all day, every day, they for the most part don't and haven't. And I'm not putting blame on anyone because it's so hard to do. And I think that's why you call AI electricity because it actually enables that, right?
Well, I think so. Again, part of what we're doing is going into the part of you asked again what set me on the journey. One teacher said to me, she said, am I supposed to teach the rigor of the curriculum or the kids in front of me? And the
Mm,
answer is both. But back to the whole thing being a little hard,
yeah.
like she's not wrong that bridging that, much less bridging that for 26 wonderfully unique individuals, is very hard. And I think what too often we see happening in classrooms is the teacher, one of two things happens. Either they are so worried about kids struggling, and they're not wrong, left to their own devices with that question. I watched it. A lot of kids out of the gate didn't know what to do with that question. And so the teacher holds it whole class and they ask the question and maybe three kids answer and then they move on. And then the next question, same thing. And frankly, intellectual engagement is optional for the other 24 kids in the room. And some of them are probably paying attention. Some of them, this is middle school, may not be, or they're going in and out of attention. The other option is I give it to them on a handout and kids are set to struggle and they put down the best answer they can. They put down the literal comprehension of those lines of poetry and then they move on.
Yep.
The difference now is every kid is answering every single question and intellectually grappling with it. And they're getting real time feedback that allows them to revise their thinking and their writing, and they get closer to encoding success before they move on.
I don't know about both of you, but the
Cognitively, that's
headline
a very different experience. Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say the headline I'm taking away from this, right, is everyone's worried right now about AI and cognitive offloading. You're actually have used it to do the exact opposite, which is to make sure no one escapes this cognitive work and struggle, which is it's a significant different use case of AI, but it's significantly different use case of the classroom in a lot of average schools across the country right now. It leads into the question I have, which I'm just curious, like, is it hard for schools to figure out how to use Course Mojo? What does that on ramp look like? Do they think of it as AI? Do they think of it as like an engaging digital learning activity? Are you getting caught up in the backlash against ed tech and the over promising and under delivering? Like, how is that all playing out?
Yeah. I personally lead a lot of teacher PD. I just love doing it and
Mm.
I learn a lot from it. And it's kind of fun to show up and we have a phenomenal partnership with Jackson, Mississippi. And I was there leading teacher PD and they're so nice. Like the teachers are so nice. They come in, but the truth is they're looking at me like, who is this lady? And it didn't help that all they were told is like, come and learn about a new AI tool aligned to the curriculum. Like that does not inspire confidence in the vast majority of teachers. And one of the things that's wonderful is they actually have a significant number of experienced teachers. So it's actually teachers who had been teaching for a while. And they start out a little side-eyed. Like, they're nice, but they're like, I'm skeptical. And the first thing we do, like within the first 15 minutes of the PD, is they become students in a Mojo-powered classroom. And it's often a text, because it's a curriculum, that they've taught. And we start normally with, we serve up a very challenging one. I remember in this case, it was historical fiction about westward expansion. And they were like, "Whew, the kids really struggled with this one." And fifth grade. And then the teachers get into it and they realize how delightful it is. I mean, one thing I do really want to emphasize is we care a lot about joy, and you should love reading. This should not be, yes, it's cognitive and you got to productively struggle, but we are often like Mojo and the way it's organized, we're taking delight in the text and the insights, and the combination of affirmation. And then when you get a partially correct or fully correct answer, Mojo has like just little emojis, like hundreds of them, that sort of like your message the same way it would on social media or texting. And the kids love that. Like, oh, I got the little man on the surfboard or the muscle. And then if you get a 3 out of 3 on your writing after multiple rounds of revision, you get different gifts. And I saw llama on a surfboard yesterday, and like, it's the digital sticker. Like, we don't overly gamify. They'll never be playing asteroid blasters or whatever in reading class, but we believe in recognizing quality thinking and quality work, the same way a great teacher does that praise. And we make it easy for teachers to celebrate kids too. That's even more meaningful. But the point is, the teachers start out in this skeptical place, and then they experience it, and they experience the delight of my ability to identify who needs help and make my way over to them or facilitate the class discussion. And the other thing I would say is, because they have this live dashboard, teachers have told us they're more comfortable letting kids work together in partners in small groups, which I also think is something that I'm anxious about, is there's not enough of in classes in this, especially in this AI future. And because now they have, as a teacher said to me, eyes everywhere. They know immediately if that group in the back that's gotten good at looking like they're working is not actually working. And so that's important. I think in terms of what's hard, we also have the pleasure of working in New York City. And I was walking classrooms there with some coaches, and we were identifying that some of this small group work could be more effective. They were just happy it was happening, but they want with it, it could be more effective, and that the full class discussion could also be more effective. Those are things they said they're working. I mean, New York City has seen great gains with New York City Reads, but that's what they're working on already. Like, that's the same way we're all trying to improve effective instruction. Yeah. And I think the feeling was, in the moment, Mojo is nudging those behaviors to be enabling and nudging, but that there still is a level of teacher training and expertise that has to run alongside. So we're asking ourselves, how could we support that even more in the context of the product with suggestions and sort of additional insight in real time? But that's really the hard part. I would say logging in is smooth and easy because of all single sign-ins. The dashboard is clear and intuitive. It's colors that direct you where you need to go. So that's not the hard part. It's teaching and helping. We're giving an alley-oop, but the teacher still has to execute some of those effectiveness moves.
Daisha, along those lines, I think about this often, and I don't want to give you heart palpitations because it gives me heart palpitations, but if you were back leading a network of schools again, like we used to, and I know neither of us, that's not our chapter of life right now, but if you were there at this moment, what other opportunities besides this one, because clearly this is a need and you're passionate about, like, what else are you seeing in the world that you would be hopping on and wanting to bring into your schools and your network? What's the sort of low-hanging fruit that you'd be going after?
Yeah, well, I think those are two different questions. Low-hanging fruit versus, I mean, what you inspired me to do, Diane, oh my gosh, more than a decade ago, was to create a whole new school model. And I do think, back to this Model 1, Model 2, Model 3, mean, we're all finding incredible efficiencies just by using AI and the finance, the operations, that there's so many ways in which we should be doing that. And I am for saving teachers time. I'm most interested in the space I'm in, which is like, how do we improve the core teaching and learning? And I think those have to be in some level student facing, because yeah. And I know there's been some resistance to that, and it has to be safe and pedagogically strong. But I would be trying to create a new model as well.
Mm.
And I think that I don't think you take it, what we did inspired by you was first one school and then three schools. But I have the pleasure of being a part of CPRE fellowship, and they asked us to redesign, to design a school, if we could, or a school model based on what we know now. And I do think the emphasis, I still believe knowledge matters. I still believe core skills matter. And the emphasis has shifted for me, like
Mm.
entrepreneurship, creativity, the human connection skills, leadership, judgment, ethics. And I think because we can potentially have the AI powered learning experiences be so much more effective, I think that opens up more time for, I know, a personal favorite of yours, project based learning. I think there's a way for AI to be embedded coaches in projects so that they were always so darn hard to pull off. But I think what's exciting to me about this chapter, and the first thing we're always talking to district leaders about, and they're talking to each other about, is start with what's your vision? What are
Mm.
your goals? What's your vision? What are your values? And now increasingly, AI can power a lot of that. Now it takes this kind of specific design the way we've done it. I don't mean to imply like you can go to ChatGPT and it will run your school for you. Like that is not how it's going to work. But if you decide we're committed to project based learning based on a knowledge graph, that can be powered now.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
hopeful that there'll be more and more products that are trying to bring more and more of these experiences to life.
Let me ask one last question, and Diane, I want you to answer this as well. So it's a question for both of you. You didn't want to give yourself PTSD on running a network again, but we've talked about it. Like you both founded schools, you both founded charter networks, you both had distinctive philosophies, enjoyed success. You both left, founded ed tech companies. I'd love to hear one reflection that you both have from being on the other side, if you will, on the ed tech company side, or a company that provides to schools. You can view it either way. One reflection that your school network founder self would have been surprised by at the time. I,
Mm.
both of you,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your reflections.
You want to go first, Diane?
I was going
My
to say,
gosh, I'm
Okay.
thinking. Uh,
I will just say there's so many things, but it took a while for me to build new muscles, frankly, because initially particularly when you were running a system that got into a certain size, like as you said, we were 41 schools when I left. You had to set these big multi-year priorities and goals, and you had to go after them in a sustained, focused kind of way. And it was a lot about keeping this large organization aligned around the pursuit of those goals and cascading communication and systems to support this. And this is fast and
yes.
iterative and responsive. And if we had tried to write a 2-year product roadmap, it would have been so painfully wrong. And so we start with vision and values. I'm not saying you don't start with vision and values, but then part of why I'm spending so much time in schools right now is watching and listening to kids and teachers, and both what's causing them friction in the moment and what their aspirations are. Like, what are they trying to get done they can't get done? And then that literally dictates our product roadmap in the most
Mhm.
wonderful way. And it's really we consider our school partners co-designers with us. Like
Mhm. Mhm.
it is that we're running design input sessions with them about next future facing things. Like it is fun. And then the tech is just moving so fast.
Yeah.
So like our ability to now have an agent that takes all the work from today and creates your do now for you the next day, in all of these things, like is now that's so different than it was 4 months ago.
wow, wow.
Yeah. That totally resonates with me, sort of the misalignment between how quickly well-run schools and systems can run and how fast, yeah, actually, I should say how slowly that moves, even though you think it's moving so fast as a school or network leader, and then this outside world is just going at a different rate and pace. And the co-building obviously resonates. I think we're in this moment in time right now where it's really, I appreciate school and network leaders who are trying to think about streamlining and focusing and only partnering with so many people and not having a million platforms and how does it all integrate and whatnot. And I think the truth is that's just not the reality yet. I think we should be striving to get there. But if we don't kind of open ourselves up to, what Daisha's doing in this one little space and what other people like how do we actually ever pull together a model that has the best in class of everything versus just sort of this one generic not good at anything approach. And so there's a real tension there I'm feeling. And on the tech founder side now, I'm like, how do I build a community on our side that makes it more thoughtful and doable for the schools? And then on the school side, I would invite them to think about how do we, sort of work more expansively right now while we collectively, bring into our space all the possibility and then move to, I think, more coherent and elegant models over time. I'm not
Super
sure that was a
interesting. No,
coherent
it's
or elegant
it,
answer.
it's one of the hypotheses when we started Entangled Ventures back in 2015 or whatever it was, that and this was higher ed, but it was similar, which is like, Arizona State University is getting pitches from like how many hundreds of companies every single day. They throw up their hands and they're like, I won't say a name of a textbook publisher, but we'll go with them. We know every product is sort of mediocre, but like they got everything. It's just simpler, right? And how do you bring forth a portfolio of best in class to an organization to simplify procurement and all that messiness,
Yeah.
but also give them confidence that they're getting the best?
Well, I would say two things on that front. I don't envy the tsunami of pitches that land I mean, it's bad for me that the amount of AI powered marketing now that lands in my inbox. And so this is, I think, a huge issue. And the more that others can step in and help school leaders make sense of all the different use cases and again, what's aligned to their vision and values. And then we haven't talked yet about outcomes, but the North Star for us as somebody who's focused on ELA achievement is ELA achievement improving? And we have actually a number of outcomes-based contracts aligned to that, which I know can be
So
scary
you've put your
for
money, but you've put your money where your mouth is.
yes.
So, yeah.
And we have seen, thankfully, huge improvements. I mean, as somebody who spent my entire life trying to improve ELA achievement and actually somewhat and successfully improving, it was always like 3 percentage points a year as reflected on the imperfect but consequential state tests. And we've seen across multiple partners, 6, 8, 10 percentage points on state tests in a single year. And that's like not normal when it comes to, and I think on some level, maybe it's not surprising because we're getting every kid to do the cognitive thinking. We have to, those results are based on using Mojo 2 to 3 times per week. So, which, and in general, we have much higher uptake and usage because it's a core tier one, because it's everything else. But so I think it's only Amira and Course Mojo on the reading side that have multiple independent efficacy studies. So that's not even just us. That's ESSA tier 2 research studies now that show that. And I think people say, maybe this is why Diane and I, coming from the seats we were in, they said sometimes ed tech folks like, it's too soon to evaluate impact. And I'm like, I just, kids are spending an entire year of their life in one of the most consequential classes of ELA. And we're saying we can't evaluate impact? Like, yes, the product is very different at the end of the year, thanks to all the feedback we've gotten along the way. But we still had this precious time with kids. Did it or did it not improve the
Right.
core thing we're trying to go after together?
Here.
So
Yeah.
No, I think that's very well said. All right,
Yeah.
let's wrap the conversation. We could clearly talk to you for a long time, but we've got one more segment. Before we do that, just a quick note as our listeners know, this season of Class Disrupted is sponsored by Learner Studio, which is a nonprofit. It's motivated by one question. And that is, what will young people need to be inspired and prepared to flourish in the age of AI as individuals, in careers, and of course, for civil thriving? Learner Studio is sponsoring this season on AI and education because in this critical moment, we need more than just hype. We need authentic conversations asking the right questions from a place of real curiosity and learning. You can learn more about Learner Studio's mission and the innovators who inspire them at www.learnerstudio.org. I think we have lived up to the spirit of the conversations that they hope to have here. And before we let you go, Daisha, fun segment we always have is something we've been reading, watching, listening to. We try to get outside of education, but as Diane and I often note, we fail probably about half the time. So we'll let you go wherever wherever you go on this question.
I am reading and thinking and listening to a lot of education focused stuff. I would say one quick on the work thing. Lenny's podcast has taught me a
Mm.
tremendous amount about, as somebody who's making a transition into product and tech, I feel like it's my weekly tutorial. But I also, we mentioned my teenage boys. So I try to spend some of that time with them, and they're getting me into anime. And
Oh,
so I just finished Death Note.
That I didn't have that on my checklist for you. Okay.
No, I have never watched anime before, but if it's an opportunity for me to hang out with teenagers and they're pretty great stories of like heroes, and even more, they're kind of into the anti-hero, which then leads to a whole bunch of good conversations. So,
that's awesome. I love that. Anything that I can connect with my kiddos on is definitely something I will do. In this particular case today, I'm going to recommend a documentary film which is nominated for an Oscar. And this was my husband's pitch to me, which was, I will say, not very compelling, which is there's this new film out and it's about death. And I really want to watch it, and I think you'll like it because apparently you also laugh in it. And I was like, wow, that's not compelling at all. But it turns out that Come See Me in the Good Light is actually an extraordinary film. And it is the relationship of two poets who have these really interesting backstories, and one of them is diagnosed with cancer. And um I think he was wrong. I don't think it's about death. I think it's about living. And it's a really beautiful film for this moment in time. So,
I was
recommend.
I was going to say it sounded like a Shelley Kagan Yale sort of course the way you started to pitch it, and then you changed that up on us. But I'm going to go a totally different direction because you're outpacing me at the moment, Diane. But as I said in our last episode, it's America's 250th, and I'm going to give my brother a shameless plug on this one. I know we both read a lot on outside of our day jobs, but this one's a little bit more personal because it's my brother, Jonathan Horn. He's been writing This Week in American History for the Free Press. It's a weekly column, comes out on Wednesdays. It's a fresh look at history that I've really enjoyed. He names events happening around the country to celebrate the 250th, including an event in Dorchester near me, which has helped us plan some outings with my kids, which has been super fun. But it was actually his piece on Thomas Jefferson a few weeks back that I highly recommend to all of our friends for its bigger messages and perspectives on the state of our union then, but also the state of our union now. And so highly recommend. And I'll just say, Daisha, huge thank you again. This was a fantastic conversation. We're lucky you're working on this. And for all of you, our listeners, keep the feedback coming both publicly and privately. And we'll see you next time on Class Disrupted.